العلم أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدمه. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
Then you're not sinning for committing it. So I just forgot to record, or press the record button. لكن على كل inshallah, hopefully the other students can catch up. We haven't gone far. طيب. So we've started from the line 25. والخطأ والإكراه والنسيان أسقطه معبودنا الرحمن لكن مع الائتلاف يثبت البدل وينتفي التأتيم والزلل. So we were just saying that this qa'idah, we've already studied these two lines when we were talking about al-mashaqqatu tajlibu taysir and asbab al-takhfif, the reasons for takhfif, or the reasons for there to be concessions in the sharia. From them is if a person makes a mistake, or if a person is forced to do something, or if a person forgets to do something. So we were saying that if a person does an action that they were commanded to do, out of forgetfulness, they leave it out, then they are not blameworthy in terms of hukum taklifi. For example, a person forgets to pray Salat al-Isha, for example, and they remember the next day or the next morning, they need to make wudu and pray from that point onwards. Lakin, they won't be sinning. Lakin, in terms of whether the action is left as it is, no, they have to make it up. Likewise, if a person prays the salah without wudu, they still need to make wudu before they pray. So their salah is invalid because they prayed without wudu, like they are not sinning. However, they still must pray. Like if a person does something that they were meant to leave out or abstain from, something which was haram, for example, eating whilst fasting, then if they did so accidentally, if they accidentally ate something, or if they have accidentally had something to drink, then they leave, then they obviously they're pardoned for this and they're not sinning. They're pardoned for this and they should carry on fasting. طيب. As for if a person, when it comes to the huquq of a person, huquq of a servant, the rights of another servant, then again, they're liable for fixing whatever it was that they damaged. Right? Likewise, the same goes for al-ikrah and al-nisyan, when a person forgets to do something, or al-ikrah when they are forced to do something. And obviously we talked about the conditions for something to be considered al-ikrah. So for example, someone being forced to do something, if they do it, they are excused and they won't be sinning. As Allah Jalla wa Ala says, "Man kafara billahi min ba'di imanihi illa man ukriha wa qalbuhu mutma'innun bil iman walakin man sharaha bil kufri sadran fa alayhim ghadabun min Allah wa lahum 'adabun 'azim." So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pardons those who are forced to say something that they do not want to say or that they do not believe in, lakin whilst having firm iman, and their iman is in their heart. Whilst their iman is in their heart, so they are excused from this. Also the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "La talaqa wa la i'taqa fi ighlaqin." And there's no talaq. A person cannot be forced to do talaq, divorce his wife, nor can they be forced to free their slave out of being forced to do so. Lakin there are conditions that we must understand when it comes to ikrah. From them, for the conditions of ikrah, for one's forcing to be correct and for him to be able to take the concession of this forcing, then there are conditions that have to be met. From these conditions, أن يكون المكره قادرا على إيقاع ما هدد به. That والمكره ليس قادرا على دفعه. That the person, so the first condition for the ikrah to be correct is that a person has to be able to, in reality, be able to carry out whatever it is that he's threatening with. He has to be able to carry out his threat. Like for example, if a small child threatens you with killing you, then obviously this small child cannot kill you, or a baby cannot kill you. So you can't say that is ikrah. Also, the person that is being forced should not be able to defend himself. Like, and if they are able to defend themselves and repel this ikrah, this forcing, then that is not considered ikrah. Also, the second condition, أن يكون الإكراه عاجلا ليس آجلا. That this ikrah, the threat must be now. It must take place in the present time. Like, if a person says, if you don't commit a kufr act, I'm going to kill you in a few months' time or next year, then that isn't considered ikrah. So for example, the Shaykh al-Shaykh Hafidhullah in his explanation says, so if a man says to another man, divorce your wife or I shall kill you next year, then this is invalid. Also the third condition is أن يشق أو أن يكون ما يكره عليه يشق تحمله, that what you're being forced to do is something that you're not able to carry out, or you're not able to take the burden of, you're not able to cope with it. Like, if someone forces you with something which is easy that you can cope with, then that isn't considered ikrah. طيب. So then the line number 27, the Shaykh says, rahmatullah alayhi, وَمِن مَسَائِلِ الْأَحْكَامِ فِي التَّبَعِ يَثْبُتُ لَا إِذَا اسْتَقَلَّ فَوَقَعَ. This is quite an important qa'idah as well. The Shaykh rahmatullah alayhi, he mentions that he mentions in his manduma that from the rulings that are connected, from the rulings that are connected is allowance. However, one is the when, however, not when it is independently occurs, or when it independently occurs. So ومن المسائل الأحكام في التبع, and from the rulings that contain or that can't stand alone, يثبت لا إذا استقل فوقع. So they take the same or take a different ruling were they to be alone. An explanation of this, or the general meaning of this qa'idah, is you've got a hukum. You have a hukum. This hukum, when it is on its own, it has a separate ruling. Like when it is put along with another mas'ala, when it is attached to another mas'ala or another hukum, it takes a different ruling. And we shall see in the examples. So there's a hukum, there's a mas'ala, a certain mas'ala at hand, an affair, a matter, an issue. When it's on its own, it has a hukum. But when you connect it to other masail and you put it under another umbrella, it takes a different ruling. It takes a different ruling. And this is a qa'idah which is quite important. And it has a lot of examples in the fiqh of al-Islam. It has a lot of examples in the fiqh of al-Islam. The dalil for this qa'idah, and an example for it at the same time, is the hadith in which the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam حَرَقَ النَّخْلَ بَنِي نَضِيرٍ. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he burnt, the Jews, when they fell into treason in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he commanded them obviously to be exiled, and also he commanded for their nakhl, or their trees, their palm trees, to be burnt. Right. So this is a hukum. This is a hukum that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave, which is that all of the palm trees will be burnt. Right. Then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in another hadith, لا يعذب بالنار إلا رب النار. No one punishes with the fire except the Lord of the fire. Right. Where's the mahal al-shahid? The mahal al-shahid is that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanding the companions, knowing or commanding for these trees to be burnt, there are going to be small animals and small insects that are within these gardens, within these parks, that are to be burnt. Right. Lakin they are only being burnt following on from the trees of the Jews being burnt, the palm trees. So the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded the companions to burn these trees. Once they burnt these trees, underneath this, there arises what? Or there comes the burning of small insects, small spiders, caterpillars, and so on. Right. Lakin, what is the ruling on burning insects? What is the ruling on burning methalan spiders and caterpillars and small animals, ants and so on? It is haram, muharram. So this hukum, where this says يَثْبُتُ لَا إِذَا اسْتَقَلَّ فَوَقَعَ, on its own, it takes a different ruling. Lakin, allowing the companions to burn this park or this garden down, what happens? You will be burning ants, insects, other insects, and so on, caterpillars. Lakin, that ruling only comes under the burning of these trees. For example, another example, so that is the dalil for this qa'idah. There's also the ijma'. There's also ijma' Imam al-Suyuti mentions, and also Imam al-Mawardi, and also Imam al-Nawawi rahmatullah alayhi. And Imam al-Suyuti in Ashbah al-Nadha'ir, which is a kitab of Qawaa'id al-Fiqhiyyah, they mention that there's a ijma' in this qa'idah. There's an ijma' on this qa'idah. So that's the general meaning of this qa'idah, along with evidence, along with its evidence. With these examples that we're about to mention, inshallah, it will become a lot clearer. So, for example, from the examples is that Muslims are commanded to spend the Ayyam al-Tashriq and also the 8th night of the Hijjah and the 9th and so on, the 8th in Mina, which is when we're in Hajj, the city of tents, the area where they have all of the tents. So that is called Mina. It is wajib for the Muslims to spend the night of the 8th there. Muslims have to spend the night, or strongly recommended to spend the 8th, like to spend the 10th and the 11th and the 13th, 12th, 13th is wajib. It is wajib. So the night of Eid, or the day after Eid, the 11th, 12th, and the 13th, it is wajib to spend that time in Mina. Right. And it has parameters, it has areas, it has a certain area which is broken off from everywhere else, and there's signs. Mina starts here, and on the other side, Mina ends here. Right. So the ruling is that it is wajib for Muslims to stay in Mina. However, what happens is sometimes Mina gets filled. Mina is full of Hujjaj, people that are performing the pilgrimage. So what happens is they build other tents just outside Mina, like it is connected to Mina. So those people that are outside the boundaries of Mina, for example, you say Mina ends here and you find tents on this side. Those people that are outside of Mina on this side, they take the same ruling as those that are in Mina. Why? Because now the area of Mina is filled. So it is permissible for them to stay outside of Mina, but they are considered as if they are in Mina. Right. Lakin, that's when it comes under Mina and it's full. However, if a person comes to Mina or comes just outside Mina and says, I'm not going to go into Mina, even though there's space there, I'm going to camp out here, then their Hajj is not correct, or their staying of Mina is not correct. They haven't fulfilled that wajib of spending the night or those nights in Mina. So this ruling on its own, meaning staying outside the boundaries of Mina, is not considered correct, is invalid. However, if a person tries to enter into Mina, but it's full and ends up camping outside Mina, then it is considered as if they have prayed inside, or it's as if they have camped inside Mina at the same time. Right. Another example that the scholars mention for this qa'idah is if a person is praying behind the imam, مثلا, musalli is praying behind the imam, and the person doesn't make a mistake in his salah, the person that's praying behind the imam, like in the imam makes a mistake in the salah. The imam, we know that if he makes his salah, if he makes a mistake, he has to pray sujood al-sahwi in his salah. He has to pray sujood al-sahwi. And the ma'mum, the person that's praying behind him, has to follow him. Even though the ma'mum, the person praying behind the imam, hasn't made a mistake. Like he still has to pray sujood al-sahwi. Why? At-tabi'. He has to follow the imam. However, if this person was praying on his own, the one in the back, praying behind the imam, if he was to pray alone, on his own, and he has not made a mistake in the salah, he hasn't forgotten, or he hasn't increased anything in the salah, or he hasn't omitted anything from the salah, then he does not need to pray sujood al-sahwi. So the hukm here, he has to pray sujood al-sahwi behind the imam. Although he hasn't made a mistake, he has to pray sujood al-sahwi behind the imam. إِنَّمَا جُعِلَ الْإِمَامُ لِيُؤْتَمَّ بِهِ. Verily the imam has been placed there to follow him. But if it's the same scenario outside of the salah, when he's praying on his own, he hasn't made a mistake, but he's praying on his own, he cannot pray sujood al-sahwi. So on his own, it takes a different ruling. Like when he's praying behind the imam and he doesn't make a mistake, it takes a different ruling of him having to pray sujood al-sahwi with the imam. Right. Also, from the examples is that a person can't pray on behalf of another person. So you can't say to a person, I'm going to pray 2 rak'at on your behalf. So a person cannot say, I'm going to pray 2 rak'at on your behalf. However, if you're performing Hajj or Umrah on behalf of someone else, then it is permissible for you, rather it is wajib for you to pray 2 rak'at on his behalf. After you do tawaf, after you do the tawaf of the Bayt, of the Kaaba, then you're expected to pray 2 rak'at behind the maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Right. Those 2 rak'at that you're praying, in reality you're praying on behalf of this individual. But why is it permissible in this case? Whereas we said earlier on, if you pray, you can't pray on behalf of someone. The difference is, in this scenario, you're performing Hajj or Umrah on his behalf. So these 2 rak'at, they come under the Hajj or the Umrah of this individual that you're praying on behalf of, or you're performing Hajj on behalf of, or Umrah on behalf of. Like when he's praying on his own, you cannot, or a person, you cannot say to someone, I'm going to pray 2 rak'at and that's it on your behalf. So you can't pray 2 rak'at individually as a separate ruling, but when it comes to performing Hajj, then it's permissible to perform 2 rak'at. Right. Likewise, from the examples that the scholars mention is, if there is mathalan a she-camel, a pregnant she-camel, there's a pregnant she-camel, and the person mathalan, and obviously she is about to die or she's weak. So, or a person slaughters this animal, this pregnant she-camel, they slaughter this animal. If the child or the baby or the thing that she was carrying, the kid that she was carrying, the child that she was carrying, if it comes out alive, then you still need to slaughter it. If it comes out dead, then you don't need to slaughter it. Why? Because the slaughtering of the mother of the she-camel is enough for this small child, of this small she-camel or this small camel. That slaughtering of the mother she-camel is enough. Like, and if it comes out alive, then you still need to slaughter it. Again, that's a difference in the hukum. Right. Likewise, when it comes to buying and selling, if there's a pregnant she-camel, a person can sell the she-camel and what it is carrying, even though we don't know, is it a child, is it alive or dead, is it the twins, is there 2 of them, is there 1 of them, is it male, is female, and so on. Well, we know females, camels cost a lot more. Right. So when it's with its mother, when it's pregnant, the she-camel is pregnant, we can sell the she-camel along with what it's carrying. Right. However, we can't go to the shepherd and say we want to buy whatever is in the belly of this, whatever's in the womb of this she-camel, whatever this she-camel is carrying. We can't buy it. We can't buy it individually. So it has a different hukum. Why? Because we don't know, there's gharab, there's jahala. We don't know what is in there. We don't know if it's dead, as I said, or alive, or how many camels she's carrying, or whether it's male or female, and so on. Because of the jahala, we're not allowed to buy it individually. Also, from the other examples, mathalan, we know that when it comes to rada'a, when it comes to breastfeeding, and nursing, the nursing mother, if a woman breastfeeds a certain child, a young man, then her daughters become his sisters. Right. So say if that happens, and then years later, this young man marries one of his sisters, but no one knows, marries one of his sisters from rada'a, one of the sisters from his breastfeeding mother. Right. And then there was a woman that was present during the time of his birth or during the time of him being breastfed by this woman. And then she says, these 2 are brother and sister in rida'a. Why? Because I saw this woman breastfeed him more than 5 times, and that's her mother, so they can't be married. There, the qadi, the hakim will always do fasakh or nullify the aqd, the contract. So there will be talaq. So that is the hukm that we give to this talaq based on this woman's shahada, this woman's testimony. However, we know in general that divorcing is not in the hands of the woman. So for example, a man that's normally married to his wife and she's not a sister and it's normal, halal, then a woman can't come and say divorce him. Or the woman can't divorce herself from her husband. However, when it comes to this sort of situation, this hukum of talaq is thabit, is firm, is established, is affirmed and established by the testimony of this woman. But only as a taba', only as a follow-on from the actual initial breastfeeding. Right. So that qa'idah is, that's roughly a lot of the examples. So you should understand with a lot of the examples that we mentioned. In the next level, inshallah, when we're studying the advanced, we'll talk about different wordings of this qa'idah and the difference between this qa'idah and the qa'idah of at-tabi' tabi' and the wording of يغتفر في التوابع ما لا يغتفر في غيرها or التابع لا يفرد بحكم, the different wordings that are mentioned in this verse, in this qa'idah. طيب. The next qa'idah, the Shaykh says rahmatullahi alayhi, والعرف معمول به إذا ورد حكم من الشرع الشريف لم يحد. طيب. This qa'idah that the Shaykh rahmatullahi alayhi mentions is one of the Qawaa'id al-Kubra. العادة محكمة أو العادة محكمة فكل اسم فاعل واسم مفعول. This أو العرف محكم أو محكم أو محكم and so on, depending on the title that we give it. لكن this قاعدة, whether we say العادة or العرف, and we look at the difference in the next level inshallah, لكن the custom is from the 5 major principles. This is from the Qawaa'id al-Kubra al-Khamsa, from the 5 major principles. The first being what? Al-a'malu bin-niyat wa al-umur bi-maqasidiha. The second, al-mashaqqatu tajlibu taysir. The third, al-yaqinu la yazulu bil-shak. Al-rabi', the fourth one, la darara wa la dirar wa darar yuzal. And this one, al-urfu muhakkam. Or if we say muhakkim, or al-urfu yuhkam bihi. So the urf, the custom of the people, is to be implemented. So the Shaykh says the customs, the customs are implemented in the case of rulings from the noble Sharia left ambiguous, يعني haven't been restricted. So if we find in the Sharia a word connected to a hukum, if we find the hukum and we don't find a restriction for it or an application for it or implementation for it from the Sharia, then we have to go back to the custom. What is considered the norm? When we're talking about the ta'rif or ta'rif of al-urf or al-'ada, it is, يعني اصطلاحا, you might want to write this down obviously, it is كل فعل أو كل قول أو فعل أو ترك اعتاد عليه الناس. كل فعل, كل قول, every act, every statement, or every fi'l, every action, or وترك, or every leaving off, اعتاد الناس عليه, that the people have become acquainted with, used to. طيب. As for the ta'rif of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi rahmatullahi wasi'ah, he says, عرف يعني, it is ما تعارف عليه الناس من أمور دنياهم. ما تعارف عليه الناس من أمور دنياهم. It is that which the people have become acquainted with. من أمور دنياهم, from the affairs of their dunya. From the affairs of their dunya. And we look at the conditions in a minute.